Welcome back to another episode of Uncommon Wealth, the show where we dive into the mindsets, moves, and mechanics behind building generational wealth. With us today is Darryl Cohen, a seasoned serial entrepreneur who scaled multiple business from beauty products to beverage distribution and now leads Victory Food and Beverage. Darryl has a track record of building brands, executing strategic exits, including 2 notable sales, and mentoring founders and scaling with impact and equity. Darryl, thanks for coming on. And let's kind of start at the beginning with your current project, Victory Snacks. Can you share a little bit of the backstory, how the business come to life and what those early moments look like for you?
Sure. It's sort of like everything else in life. They sort of just evolve out of nowhere. In this particular case, I built a business in the 80s and 90s that had provided a lot of income for a lot of people. And one of them was a British gentleman who had a patent on an item that I licensed from him and subsequently bought the patent. But he retired in Mallorca, and for many years, I guess because I paid him a lot of money, he thought he had to stay close to me. For many years after I retired, he kept hounding me to get in the beer business, even though I don't drink very much and I didn't have much interest. But after I went over to Europe and saw what they were doing, I thought it would be something interesting to do in the U.S. And so in around 2015, 16, we brought the venture to the U.S. and quickly realized that it really wasn't ready to scale in the U.S. And so I slowly took that business and morphed it into other things that were in the beverage industry, especially alcoholic beverages. And lo and behold, by the time we got to around 2020, 21, there was very big demand for what we were doing. It was very unique. And we started working with major hotels, especially all-inclusive resorts outside the U.S. And then, of course, COVID hit, and it kind of put a damper on that business. And we realized that while we had been looking outside the U.S. to do business, that our product and how it worked made such a difference in the U.S. that we decided to regroup and start concentrating on the U.S. And one door leads to another, and before you know it, we're actually looking at doing beer in a different way than we were, meaning that in cans instead of kegs. And then we're approached by different brands that heard about us, especially because we were doing everything private label, and asked us if we could do things for them. And one thing leads to another, and all of a sudden, you're in the golf industry, you're working with schools across the country, and we have our own brands as well. And we ended up being quite creative in terms of coming up with new kind of products that not many people have seen as far as alcoholic drinks. And then on top of that, during COVID, for fun, and I think anyone who's listening to this can really appreciate it coming from someone who's sort of a nutcase entrepreneur, if you will. I have, he's still alive. I shouldn't say had yet. I have a father-in-law who's about 95, although he may not know that he's alive still. But in any case, he's from Arkansas and had been making ham jerky for everyone in the family for years. I mean, like 20, 25 years, he'd been smoking on a smoker. And this was he'd already left Arkansas when he was younger in the Dust Bowl. And this was up in Northern California, in the mountains. And every time we all came, we said, it's the greatest turkey ever. And everyone in the family kept looking at me, why don't you do this? So I said, because I'm not in the jerky business. I'm in jerky, but I'm not in the jerky business. And for some reason during COVID, my wife and I were babysitting 3 of our grandchildren, my son's kids. And the oldest one started talking to me about business and how did I get started. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to do something for you that I really haven't done for many other people. And if I have it, they've paid me a lot of money. I'm going to go get some ham and you're going to learn how to smoke it with me. And we're going to put it in bags and you're going to go sell it at school. And if you can sell what we make, I'll start a company with you and your brother and your sister and your other cousin as the owner. And you'll be in partnership with me and I'll fund it. And I will find a distributor and we will start selling it. And lo and behold, we did. And so that started, if you will, Victory Snacks. And that product today is called Berserky Jerky. And it's a top 50 item on Amazon in the meat category. And so that led us to doing lots of other things. So when I say one door opens and leads you to something else, you have to recognize that the door that's open is taking you in the right place, not in the wrong place. And so that's how.
Yeah. And how do you discern that?
It's probably a little bit of a sixth sense. It's probably not getting your ego involved because I don't even eat turkey. At my age, singers don't eat much turkey because it ends up more in your teeth than it does down your throat. And for me, it's really a matter of having a sense of the marketplace. I seem to have always had that from a young age. And so when you say, how do you choose the right door? You choose the right door, it should be based upon some kind of intuitive sense and logic about this thing looks like I could buy it cheap and I could sell it high. And if you feel that you can because there's a real marketplace for it, well, then it's something you should consider. It doesn't mean you can't do it better. It doesn't mean you can't do it worse. It doesn't mean you're going to make money or you're going to lose money. It just means that there's an opportunity in front of you. And
And now that the business is operating at scale, Darryl, what's been the hardest part about staying as much as you can out of the day to day while still growing and protecting Victory Snacks and what you've built?
well, you can't stay out of the day to day. I mean, probably one of the reasons I've been successful since before I even graduated college is that I'm a 24/7 kind of guy. I got to sleep, obviously, but what I mean by that is that um, I'm there at any moment to be involved and engaged in everything that I'm supposedly engaged in. Now, it
Mhm.
helps as you build a business that you can bring lots of other people in. So our payroll is quite large. It's not just me. And things that I used to do, or I was the only one to do, I don't have to do anymore, right? We have a financial officer, so I don't have to do the accounting like when the business started. Well, I have an admin who can do lots of nuisance things that I don't want to do, from whether it's getting licenses or signing deals or whatever. And we have people that specialize in graphics and making commercials and operations from the back end and buying and shipping and so on and so forth. So, it's not that I walk away. There's nothing that I haven't been engaged with today since very early in the morning, across the board, everything from pricing of beer for stadiums to, even bringing on 2 new people in social media, meeting them and understanding what they're gonna do for us. So, no, I don't really run from anything, because the reality for me is I retired when I was 49. I was very fortunate that I built, large businesses and I sold them. But within 2 or 3 years, I realized that that's not me. This is me. I'm free
Mhm.
and this is what I do. And, it's the way I'm gonna die, I guess.
So that's the question I was going to ask you next. You've done this before, not in this particular industry, but you've started a business, grown a business, sold a business a few times. When did you realize that this Victory Snacks was more than just a business and it could become real lasting wealth, not just for you, but for your children and your nephew, your nieces and nephew that you built this for?
I think I always knew it. I always know it when I get into it, because when the door opens for me, it has to be something that I believe can scale. And if I think it can scale, then the opportunity is endless. Whether the company's worth $1 or $100 million, to me, it has to be something that's sort of open ended, and then it's really upon me and the organization and the products, to come together to do it right. And if we do it right, it'll reach its value. I never thought in any of my businesses that I was building something that I wanted to get to, oh, it's going to be worth 10,000 or $100,000. Never thought like that. I always thought that I'm going to grow it as big as I can. So one store led to 5 stores, you know. One small wholesale business became an international thing. That's just the way I operated. And then someone else determines what it's worth.
Yeah, you bet. And so, having had that perspective now and that experience in your, you've been around the block a few times now. What's one belief about wealth or success that's completely changed for you over the years?
Well, I think, this is going to sound right out of a storybook, if you will, of this is what everyone always says, but this is really true. So while I was building my businesses, I obviously was amassing quite a bit of wealth, not just in my business, but in my personal life. And it's not easy when you're 25 or 30 and you make a lot of money. And especially, back in 1975, 1980.
Mm.
You don't know what to do with the money. I came from a very comfortable family, but no one ever guided me on this is how you invest money. Other than real estate, I had no idea about anything. And so I
Mhm.
would tell you that not that my money was in under the mattress, but my money was sitting in a bank getting very relatively low interest for many years. And I never thought much about it, because most of my money I would frequently use for my businesses. If I needed an extra help
To
to
reinvest.
reinvest, right. My business is
Yeah,
where I was making money, so that's where I invested.
right.
However, that being said, I was fortunate enough to sell a number of businesses from like 1975 to about 95, different businesses that I owned that had done quite well. Some of them sold for a couple hundred grand, some of them sold for a multiple of that. And so um, each time it was kind of like, wow, this is kind of cool. I have X amount more money. Of course, living in California didn't go very far, but be that as it may, it wasn't until I sold my primary business to a large public company and my chain of stores to a private equity group that it dawned on me that, oh my gosh, I got a lot of money. And so, the first thing that normally happens is that you start spending it, whether it's multiple
Mm.
houses, yachts, or whatever. In my case, uh, you quickly realize that that doesn't really change your day. You may have a good day being on your yacht, but it doesn't really change your day. In fact, it's more of a headache. And so the realization I had probably within about a year or two of selling my businesses was that uh, my daughter came down with cancer. And that's a slap in the face and scary, and a reality check that the money doesn't mean anything because we all of a sudden realize that we're mortal. Uh, at the same time, uh, there were other familiar things, family-wise going on that needed my help. And when you step into that realm, all of a sudden, it's really not so much the money anymore. It's great that you may have it, but the money isn't the same thing as when you first got that check and thought, "Oh, I can go buy a boat," right? That all goes
Right.
away, and then very quickly, it morphs into, I have more important things in my life that mean more to me than having all these material things.
Yeah, the things.
Listen, I'm in another one of my
Yeah.
homes here. I love it. I'm not complaining, but it's not the same thing that you think it is. When
Right.
you have children, if God forbid something happens to one of them, all of a sudden there's a new perspective on life. And so, and even my own mortality, I mean, I'm not young anymore. And so, um, I think that everything that you think leading up to it or crosses your mind, and then you get there, you quickly get a slap in the face and realize that's not life. Money doesn't change anything. I mean, we can look at
It's not
a
what
lot of
matters.
money, it doesn't mean anything at all.
Yeah.
So that's the reality of it. Now, is it great for me to think that, oh, I might be making a lot of money for my grandkids? Yeah, but a little scary because I don't think that they should have a lot of money until they're way older because you'd be irresponsible with it.
Well, let's talk about that. What's one thing that you could put in place or you've thought about or you already have put in place to protect what you're building there for them?
So, a lot of things that we've done were trusts for our kids. Now, of course, they were all older than where the trust was supposed to, yield to them. So that ship already sailed. They were there.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, You know, I think that the preparation that we had especially when I sold my businesses in '99 and 2000, I had really good counsel that helped me. I think that's really important for people that even if you're not making a lot of money, that you get prepared, that for the first time someone says to you, "You need to think about everybody if you're not here anymore." And,
Yeah.
you're in that business, you understand
Yep.
that whether it's
Yep.
life insurance or health insurance, putting money away, setting guidelines for how that money will be dispersed, all those things I never thought about, to be honest with you. It's
But you had good counsel that helped you
Yes,
think about
yes,
that.
very much
Yeah.
so.
And Daryl, some owners view their company as their retirement plan, which you experienced earlier on. The value is what someone's willing to pay for it. They get that huge windfall. They ride off into the sunset. And some of them stay, right? They stay retired. But others try to build wealth separately while the business is doing well and they start carving out some money while the business is growing in that cash flow. How do you think about that yourself, having been on both sides of that coin now?
You know, it's funny how you're asking this because there's sort of a dual answer, if you will. I realized early on that, my business wasn't the end all be all, it was me. I realized that I was the one that could do this over and over again. I had proven it to myself by the time I was probably 40, 45. And so I never had any fear that, oh, if this business doesn't make it, and trust me, I've had customers go on, bankrupt on me for $1 million. And when you're 36, 38, that's not comfortable, right? I don't care how much money you have. It's
Mhm.
not good.
Mhm.
But the reality is that I knew early on that I could bet on myself. I discovered that when I was in college. And the minute I had that, I never had the fear of, not having, if you will. in the overall scheme of things. However, I've found that as I've gotten success financially and also just people knowing me, all comfortable that they would trust me with things to talk about, that I have a much better sense of what to invest in and what not. And I'm not talking about my time. I'm talking about money here, right? Time as
Right.
well, but
Right. Right.
money. And so
Yeah.
I would say that with my relationships that I currently have, that probably a week doesn't go by where someone that I really value their opinion isn't involved in something that can make a lot of money or is making a lot of money, and they ask me to get involved. So I have the benefit of
Nice.
that, of having a wider net that crosses lots
Yeah.
of different kind of businesses. And I don't care if it's healthcare, if it's AI, it doesn't matter. Um, I'm very fortunate. I mean, some of those things have been wildly profitable for me. I mean, even the original stock I got in my company, if I would have sat with it for 15 more years, I'd be worth literally 50 times what I'm worth today. But I didn't. But life goes on, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So the wealthy, Darryl, as you well know, have been using insurance as a financial tool for
Yeah.
decades. What have you done, without details, but generically speaking, what have you done using insurance to create a legacy for your family, maybe reduce income taxes from one year to the next, create tax-free benefits in your business or personally? What can you share with us that doesn't give away privacy
Yeah, well,
on this
I think
recording?
I think that when we set up the trust for the kids, the way that the money went into the trust was um, the beneficial. Especially as I say, I'm not knocking it because I live in California, but tax rates are high. And anything we could do to, eliminate that as much as possible made a big difference because that money accrues without anyone touching it for years, right? Um, I'd say that was one. From an insurance standpoint, it's really hard. I almost have to kind of think back to some things that that I did that actually they were insurance related, but not the way you think. Things where I insured um, receivables and things like this to cover when I had millions of dollars that was owed to me. That in case everyone went south, I was willing to pay an extra percent just to protect myself, protect my
Mm,
family, if you
that's a
will.
good. Yeah.
Um, it was odd things like that, but I can't say I used insurance other than life insurance, which was really
Yeah.
a safety net, right, for my wife, and
Yeah.
now she
Yeah.
she says there's no reason to kill you anymore. So that's kinda nice. That's a good thing. I say,
Well,
"Well,
congratulations. You
you'll be
crossed
good
that
now." Yeah,
threshold.
yeah. There's really no reason for me to smother you while you're sleeping anymore and blame it on the snoring. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's
You would know these tools way better than me because
no,
I've
I
passed
do.
my
I do.
prime
But I
now,
just
right? It's no longer an issue for me.
well, and that's why you've reached that threshold where, you know, as she's mentioning to you, you're joking about it a lot of times because you were betting on yourself, right? If you had died too soon, that unlost or that lost income potential over all those years would have been substantial to the family, right? But you stayed alive and you made all that money, and now you've accrued the wealth, and the insurance now is just a liquidity play more than anything else, right? If you were to die, it creates instant liquidity so the family doesn't have to liquidate your investments and your holdings at an inopportune time. But, we all aspire to get to that point where we're able to accrue more than what our insurance policies are worth. So how are you looking ahead, Darryl, for the next 10 to
Oh
15
god.
years? How are
Oh god.
because you're not going to
Nah.
stop. How are you thinking about the next 10 to 15 years, not just in business, but personally and financially as well?
Um, that's funny because, my son's wife's folks, the father has been retired for a number of years, and he was, at the top of the totem pole of one of the biggest branded name company in beverages in the world. And, he retired with a nice package. I mean, I had a lot of stock, blah, blah, blah. And he said to me the other day, he said, "So when you're done with this, are you done finally?" And I said, "No, of course I'm not done. This is the last of the day that I die, hopefully." And the reason is because when I did stop working around 2000, I went for about 3 or 4 years and, once again, fortunate to have all these toys and time, outside of doing some consulting, I played sports every day. And not surprisingly, at that age, you shouldn't. And so from, bicep reattachment, rotator cuff, knees, and all that being worked on, the reality is that I can't play sports as much as I once did, which I like, right? I play tennis every day, but I can't. I, surf, sold the surfboard, ski, sold the skis. No better. So when you talk about the rest of your life, if you say, "Boy, I want to retire at 75, and then I don't know what I'm going to do, but I don't want to do anything," that's not me, right? It's just not me. So what I said to him was, I should be doing something like this, using my brain until I really no longer can use my brain. And if that means it's the day I die or 2 years before, it is what it is. But I learned my lesson of not working and seeing my kids sort of pass me by because I wasn't working it in their world anymore, and realizing that I'm more relevant to my kids today and I'm closer with them now because it's not just grandkids, they're adults, and I'm seemingly an adult, maybe not at times, but I'm enough of an adult that I was able to get them to get engaged in our businesses, even though they both are very successful in what they do and they've continued to do what they do. But it's really something that if you're all about family, which evidently it turned out I am, and so is my wife. You know, you have kids right now. Do you think you're going to be that grandpa who wants to live close to all your grandkids? You don't know. And then all of a sudden it happens and you feel, "Oh, I am that guy," right?
I am that guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go. And so is my wife. And so I'm good. I
That's awesome.
I've had more friends in my lifetime than I would ever have dreamt of having, and some of them are dead, and I'm totally fine with it.
So your kids have obviously had the benefit and the blessing of being able to get some experience and some wisdom from you. So the question's really geared towards your grandchildren and maybe your future, your great grandkids that you haven't even met. If they're listening to this podcast into the future, let's say 25 years plus into the future, what's one lesson you'd want them to take away from your approach to wealth and legacy?
What I would say is, don't concentrate on the wealth. Concentrate on your personal success. Because if you're successful, you will make money. That's just the way it is. And don't try to make money harming people. That's just not the right way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you just stay within who you are and discover who you are at as early an age as you can, and come to the consequences of who and what you are, then be the best that you can be. The money comes. It's very difficult in America to not make a decent living if you have the tools and you know who you are. It's not easy for everybody. A lot of people aren't given the tools. They're not blessed to be born into a family that has had some modicum of success and can show you the way. In fact, a lot of people don't. But for those that can, you're asking me about my kids, which I think they are,
Yeah.
then, I'm not going to say take advantage of the opportunities. Just take advantage of who you are. Who are you, John?
Yeah.
What makes you tick? Why are you doing this today? And so my grandkids looked at me, or great grandkids, in 25 years from now, and said, he seemed crazy. But the reality is that now that I'm 22, 23 and going through college, I think I know what he's talking about. Find yourself.
He was onto
Make
something.
yourself the best you can be, because
Yeah.
you don't need to make $1 million a year. You just don't.
Yeah.
You need to make 100 million. No, I'm just joking.
At least 10. That's good stuff, Darryl. What's a blind spot you think most successful business owners overlook when it comes to protecting their wealth?
Well, I think, if you really look at who's successful and who's not, everyone who's been successful, unless they were handed it, has always gone through the danger zone of risk, right? That, I'm doing something here that I'm investing a lot of money in, it may not work. I believe it will. Or times change, the economy changes, and you're in a downturn, or some of your biggest customers go sideways on you. For a true entrepreneur, someone who's trying to make something, to scale it, that risk is always there. It doesn't go away.
Yeah.
Maybe insurance can mitigate it, but it's very, very difficult to. And so if you don't have the stomach for it, which is why a lot of people don't own their own business, you can't do it. But I say to them that you can. It's just you have to look deeper into yourself. You have to really understand who you are and what you are. And I don't know if that's the last question, but I'll give you an answer.
No. I got others,
I'll
but
give you-
I mean,
I'll give you an anecdote, right? I went to a very good university, And I thought everyone was smarter than me by God knows how much. And my roommate spoke like a dozen languages. He was number one in his high school and blah, blah, blah. And so were some bunch of the other kids around me. And it probably took me about 6 months in sitting in classes at the school that I went to, which I won't name, but probably one of the top 5 institutions in the world. And I realized that, you know what? And I'd never thought about this. You know what? These kids are saying exactly what their parents told them. It's coming off their tongue too easy. And at 18, 19 years old, I'd have to think about really answering these things the way I feel, and I don't even know how I feel. So when someone asks you, what do you think about this? And you have an answer, that's your parents talking. That's just what it is. So when I talk about knowing yourself, right then and there, I knew I didn't know myself. And within a few months, I had this realization, they know themselves less. That's why all this talk is a bunch of BS. And so I realized that it's funny because, I talk a lot, is that I was the third kid and I was quite shy. Didn't talk very much at all because I don't think I felt that I could fit in a family where everyone was, yapping about. And especially at the school I went to. And then one day it just dawned on me that I had just as much talent as them. I may not know as much, but I had a better understanding of who I was. And so it wasn't surprising that in my junior year, I started a business that became very famous. And I sold it about a year and a half of school after I got out of school for a lot of money. I started another business, I think I didn't work for about 2 weeks and I went nuts. I started another business, and a few years later, I sold it for even more money. And I used my understanding of myself to develop a skill set. I didn't know how to do bookkeeping. I had to learn, right? I didn't know anything about marketing. I had to learn. I majored in political science. So that tells you I knew nothing. And so that one lesson of me realizing for the first time that other people who I thought were smarter, more talented, more gifted, it turned out they weren't. They were just talking from what their parents told them. And that's
Almost
right.
parrots.
Well, that's what they are. They grew up in war home,
Yeah.
and that's what I knew. But thank God my parents had something smart to say sometimes. Otherwise, I would have been a complete moron.
Well, I mean, how impressive was and still is, but then your self-awareness to be able to even, ask the question of yourself and then really take the time to find the answer. And I think that was, Darryl, and you would probably agree, the common thread amongst all of your successes was your underlying belief in you.
Yeah, right.
Right? And knowing who you are and staying true to yourself.
Right.
I think that's impressive. So I like to do something towards the end of the podcast. I like to do a little lightning round session where I'm going to ask you just a few questions, and I want you to fire off the quickest answer you can think of that comes to the top of your head. You down for it?
Yeah, remember at 73, it takes a little while to circulate and come out the other side.
Yeah. That's just you trying to buy a little bit extra time, but we can all tell how quick you are. Okay. All right. So one book that changed how you view business or wealth.
Ooh, probably, oh God, because I'm not great with names of books. Kahneman, the book about the brain, and this is long after I had been in business for many, many years. However, when I was first started, a guy at Stanford had written a book about the timing of bringing a product to market. He used a window kind of closing, how the time goes rather quick and certain things have to be done in that time format. And that really helped guide me. But it wasn't until I read Kahneman's book on, I want to say Mind, whatever it's called. He's quite well known. I think he's got a Nobel now, on, how the mind works. It wasn't until I read that a number of years ago that it all kind of came in perspective for me.
Okay, nice. One myth about entrepreneurship you'd love to bust.
Oh, probably that most people think that it's freewheeling and get to shoot by the hip and whatever, I think. But for me, I discovered very early on that actually patience is the winning formula. Just because I thought of it now and I think it's great, it doesn't mean I'm doing it today.
Right.
It just means I think it's great. That's all.
Yeah, that's a good one. What's the best piece of advice you've ever ignored? and been glad you did?
Don't marry my wife. No, I'm just kidding. 50 years. I made a big mistake
Wow,
on that one.
congratulations.
Let's see. What have I ignored the most?
The best piece of advice you've ever ignored, but you're so glad you did.
I don't know that I've had that many smart people in my life give me the best advice that I needed to ignore. There have been a few, but I wouldn't want to mention who they are because then they would know it. I will tell you this though. I will tell you this because as soon as you asked me, it just popped in my head, and I haven't thought about it for a long time. My father passed away 10, 12 years ago, around 90 or whatever, and I was never very close with him. He just wasn't a close guy. But I had a girlfriend from high school. God forbid she ever sees this because I think she's alive. And I loved her. I did. I mean, we were boyfriend, girlfriend all through high school. And we got together when I was in college, and she moved out to California. And then just one day I decided this wasn't the future for me for whatever reason. And part of it was I called my father, who I knew had married my mother when she was young. And she was pressing me to marry her. And I was probably before 1920. And my father said, I love you, but my advice to you is no. Even if you love her today, she'll be there in 5 years from now. From now. Don't do it. You know that you're not ready for it. She doesn't know it. And if she doesn't know it, that's not a good thing. And I took his advice against my better judgment because, quite honestly, I didn't have a great relationship with him. So it was probably me who was making the wrong call. But it was the right call.
That's amazing.
Then, you meet someone a year or two later when you are ready, and then it's the right person.
You're saying that, and it kind of reminds me of a joke. What's your wife's name?
Nini, Nini.
Nini. So if Nini heard you tell that story, she's like, yeah, he did make the right decision, because had you married that person, Nini would have married somebody else, and I'd be interviewing him right now.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah, most definitely. She's not just my better half. She's the smarter half, the nicer half, the normal half. Yeah, I mean, when people look at my kids, they go, no, it's not you, it's her, isn't it? Whatever.
All right, last one. What's one thing most people misunderstand about success?
The first thing I was going to say is that it's easy, and it's not. It's painful, right? Even though I love doing it, there are moments like, really, oh man, this is stressful. And, I don't know what most people think about it, to be quite honest with you. I mean, what do you think about people who are successful?
I think most people think success is quick. I think most people think it's a relatively easy path. And I think they feel like it's isolated to the very few.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree it's isolated financially, money-wise, to the very few. It's not quick. I mean, unless someone gave it to you. It's no business. With the exception of my first couple that I flipped relatively quickly just because they were in demand, no business that has been really meaningful that made a lot of money, I didn't have for 20 years. Minimum.
Yeah.
I'm on 7 or 8 with this. This will probably be sold off within the next 2 years just because of our scale. That's 20 years. And nothing is easy because all the responsibility falls on, 1 or 2 people at the top. And so it's, that's why, everyone says, oh, well, you're so creative. Well, no, I kind of thought of that, but I didn't do it until I let it come to me a year later instead of just jumping on it. And even my kids today, like slow down. And I go, no, I've slowed down. You don't know when I started. No idea. And so, I don't really know what people think on the outside. I have done, I've been asked to talk at classes and things like this. And I've mentored people. I've, been on the boards of company where I've been fortunately able to make big changes. But no one's ever said to me, tell me about you, other than I can tell you that I know. And you asked a really good question here. You asked, how did I know that I needed to know about myself? And I think the way that it happened was not like I had, a light bulb go on. It was the fact that I was continually sitting in classes, getting bored by people talking and thinking, what are they talking about? This is the same BS I hear from my parents. Like, you're just stuff. Nonsense.
Yeah. It's like a
You can't
regurgitation.
beat this.
Yeah.
Just because you put your hand up and you answered something, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And it's at that point that it sort of dawned on me that, wait a minute, maybe I know more than I thought I did. Maybe I'm not such a knucklehead. I don't know.
Hmm.
But it's a good
Darryl,
question. That's the best question that's been asked of me today.
today anyway, right? Well, thank you. I mean, your perspective, your hustle, I'm inspired by your hustle at 73. Your legacy, your focus, and what you're building. I mean, I really do appreciate you sharing your journey and your lessons with us. I want to keep this going and bridging ideas, so I want to get you back around maybe a year or two from now. Let's see how far victory is and what that looks like. And I want to say thank you to Nini for marrying you so that I could interview you today.
Yeah, no, it would have been a bummer. Could have gone lesbian, in which case, it wouldn't have been a guy. So just
Yeah,
don't,
well,
don't
I would be interviewing
yeah, there
her.
you go. You never know.
Thanks, Darryl.
Anyways, thanks a
Appreciate you
lot.
being on,
I
man.
wish you the best
Thank
of luck.
you.
And if anybody actually watches this, that's not my real name. This is a mask. This has nothing to do with anything. I'm just kidding. You're right.
All right,
Bye-bye.
Darryl. Thank you, buddy.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it. Bye.